Hello, everyone, and welcome to this exciting live conversation with the founder of the Blue Zones, Dan Buettner. My name is Ella Davar, and I'm a registered dietitian specializing in gut health and longevity. And it's such an honor to have Dan Buettner joining me today. I hope all of you will be able to stay for this conversation. It should not be more than 45 minutes, and I am so honored to be interviewing Dan Buettner today. So he came up with the new documentary, which came out last week, and it's ranking right now as a #1 worldwide documentary on longevity. I hope all of you were able to check it out, and I watched all 4, it's only 4 episodes where he discusses his findings on how people live above 100 years old. There's a lot of things to talk about, and I hope he's going to be able to discuss some of the secrets with us today and his new book called The Secrets of the Blue Zones, but how to live to 100 years old, basically. And one of them is eating locally and seasonally. And so many of you reached out to me this weekend, excited on trying new recipes and new foods, particularly the beans, the legumes, the sweet potatoes, and corn and rice. Let me know and type up some of the questions if you have some of the questions for Dan, because Dan is a specialist. He's been doing this for over 20 years. That's when he started working for National Geographic Research Department, and that's where he started to look for people who live in highest concentrations, the population group who live above 1 or to the top 100 years old, and where they reside. He found 5 different zones. One is in Japan, one is in Italy and Sardinia, another one is in Greece and Icaria, and then in Costa Rica and California. And he gathered the knowledge and the wisdom of those people into those books, and he's sharing with us the secrets to living longer. And like I shared, food is just one of them. It's also the environment, right? The environment that we live in. One of them is the stress level, the people, the communities that surround us. And Dan is going to join us any minute now. I'm waiting for him and double checking. Okay. Let me see. Dan, where are you? He's going to be joining, and I'm requesting. Stay tuned for the whole conversation and type up some of the questions, because he's here today to answer some of your exciting questions. I received a lot of them from you, particularly one about sleep and about some of the recipes, and I tried to reply in your DMs that when it comes to, here he is, here's Dan. Hi, Dan. There he is.
There you are.
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey,
I ordered your
nice to be
book,
here.
but it didn't come on time because of the holidays in the States. I'm also in Miami. I'm a registered dietitian, and I've introduced you. I've been following your work for the last 10 or 15 years because it's just speaks to my heart. Everything you've shared and how you've educated our communities and people across the globe just makes so much sense. So I just wanted to give that to you, that the level of appreciation we all have for your work. And the Netflix show, wow, how do you feel about it finally being out and ranking at #1 in the world?
It's surreal, really. I mean, like every overnight
20
success,
years.
I've been at it for 20 years, and finally, it seems to be entering the public consciousness. But this. Well, first of all, the book, The Blue Zone Secrets of Living Longer, that was 20 years in the making, and I'm very proud of that. It's full of National Geographic photography and kind of reads like a guidebook for living longer. And then the Netflix I've been offered 20 years to do documentaries, and I found the right people, a production company called Make, and the director Clay Jeter, and they really listened to me. And instead of going for the hyperbole, anti-aging, remdesivir, metformin, longevity, we stayed pure, and their cinematography is so good that this is a far more aspirational way to live longer than taking a pill or buying a superfood or any of the other nostrums you see all over the internet.
Absolutely. And
so
I wanted to give you some feedback on some people who I shared my story, and they did too, before I became a dietitian, as a nutrition educator in the United States, responsible for educating people on how to live a healthier diet. I grew up very poor in this rural village in Russia, and I never felt proud of my upbringing. I came to the United States, I worked hard, but with your documentary, it really resonated. How I was like, wow, I really grew up eating healthy. I did not have any sugar, and all of my grandparents, they grew their own food, and this is how they really, they were very self-sufficient in their way. And I started to appreciate my upbringing, and the more I spoke to my clients and to the people about it, that this knowledge is not just from the books, it's from my ancestors, the more people started to connect with their ancestors as well. And really, how they say, like, don't eat the ingredients that your grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. And it all started to make sense when you really speak to everyone's story, like talk to your grandparents, see how they lived life. It was much simpler, right, than the way we live now. But I love that you are working in Singapore now of bringing all that wisdom to the most advanced and modern populations. Tell us more about the Singapore project.
Well, I actually argue that Singapore is bringing wisdom to us. We in the United States often think if it wasn't born here, it can't be that great. But Singaporeans live about 12 more good years in full health than we do in America. And back when I was a little kid, Singapore is a fishing village, and now it's a nation with over 5 million people, and it's one of the biggest economic superpowers in the world. And they're the healthiest, and they've done so by creating with a government that has put health and the well-being of its citizens over business interests. So they're not letting the soda companies put as much sugar in sodas as they want, and they're taxing junk food, and they're taxing automobiles in favor of subsidizing walking or biking or taking public transportation. We know it's this mindless physical activity that leads to longevity, not exercise. Exercise is a good idea. We just don't do it. So they have some real lessons to teach us, and I'm hoping that policymakers actually pay attention to this Netflix documentary and think about it when they're passing laws.
Are you planning to go into and speak to the policymakers like Mark Hyman's doing these days? He's in Washington all the time to talk to those people how to fix our food supply chain. Yeah.
He's invited me. I couldn't go because I was busy, but I have a rather different take. I'm more interested in the Farm Bill, which subsidizes grains, cheap grains which we make these seed oils out of aren't all that healthy. We feed feedlot animals with it. That meat isn't all that healthy for us, and it's the inputs for the chips and the cookies and the sweets and the processed foods. So if we want a healthier America, we need to. I'm not asking for more subsidies, but I am saying let's not subsidize the inputs for junk. Let's and by the way, the way we're eating in America is easily costing us $2 trillion a year. That $2 trillion should be borne by the manufacturers that create the products that cost us the money. The responsibility, true market, the cost of a product also incorporates the harm it does. And if you take a clear-eyed view of sodas and processed foods and too much meat and cheese and it's very clear that's driving our unhealth.
Yeah.
And we need more beans and nuts and grains and vegetables
I
and recipes to
got a
make
lot of
those them
questions this
taste good.
weekend because I recommended your Netflix show and I watched it myself. Everyone was like, "So how do we make those beans and corns?" And one of the conflicting advice that's been given is about soy milk and tofu. That in America everyone's afraid of it now because of the GMO. And I've actually been someone who's been advocating for organic, non-GMO soybeans because of how nutrient dense they are. By nutritional profile, soy milk is just as good as dairy milk, but of course it's the quality of it that we need to watch for, right? And really,
Yeah, but I mean, we pounce on soy milk, uh, not realizing that 98% of the beef that we eat in this country is fed that same
grains.
GMO soybeans, and it takes 11 pounds of soybeans to make 1 pound of beef. So you're concentrating all that GMO badness when you're eating meat, but nobody seems to pounce on the meat industry for feeding animals that non-GMO. I'm not worried about it. People I'd rather see people eating GMO because the genetically modified, every seed we eat is somewhat genetically modified. So you need to be more discerning than just say, "Oh my God, GMO." I'd rather see people eat GMO tofu than organic meat, whatever
Okay.
that is.
Wow. Okay. So that we talked about that. Also, I'm based in Miami. The number one.
So
I
am
know.
I.
That's how we got connected. I'm based at the number one wellness resort in Miami. So I work with a lot of local people, and they have a lot of respect for you. And I teach them on how to support local farmers. Eat locally. Try to find food that's grown, locally without being packaged in plastic for days and weeks. And how about you? Have you ever been able to find in Florida some good farmers that you would want to talk about today?
Well, in Homestead,
Yeah.
there's those great fruit markets, and also Love Life Cafe. I think is the best plant-based restaurant in the country, not just Miami. There's one in Los Angeles now too, in Culver City. But they source their fruits and vegetables from local farmers. So I just assume have
Very
it
good.
made for me
Yes.
already.
Next topic I wanted to ask you, we covered food a little bit, is the environment. Like in your documentaries, you talk a lot about environment and how it's not our fault that we're sick, right? And we need to really watch out for the environment that we live in. What is some of your top advice for people, especially like in Florida? And I'm based in New York and Florida, and people, very busy. And I've always said you become the product of your environment. And you really highlighted so good in your books and in your documentary how we need to, focus on building the loving and nurturing relationship with our community. And have you been able to give some advice to, the busy individuals in big, large cities on how to do that? How to find that?
Yeah, well, the simplest thing is passing policies to make your streets for humans and not just cars. So walkability is huge. First of all, if you live in a well, Miami is getting worse. I love Miami, but it's swirling down the drain, and they're not paying attention to walkability. Miami Beach is doing a good job. But Miami itself, there's a piece in the Wall Street Journal saying the traffic is about 50% worse than it was in 2019. That's a correctable problem, and you correct that by prioritizing the pedestrian over the and the bicyclist over the motorist by something called a complete street policy. Okay, why is that important? First of all, if you can get to work on foot, most Americans will get more exercise walking to work than they will in a gym. That's hands down. Secondly, the air quality is better. Thirdly, little kids die. Hundreds of thousands of little kids die every year in car accidents. And the more traffic you have and the faster those cars are going, the more little kids get killed. And big adults get killed as well. the pollution, automobile pollution is associated with asthma. You live close to a busy street, your chance of asthma goes up by a factor of 5. And then finally, we know that this is according to Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. If you're driving a car to work, that is the number one source of unhappiness in your day. So if you can walk to work, it completely flips that negative experience to a positive experience. And anybody who's there, from city council, it's your job, it's your choice. Do you want a city built for cars, traffic, and pollution, and sitting behind a car steering wheel, or do you want a vibrant, walkable city where your people are connecting and businesses are thriving because people aren't speeding by it? It's up to you.
Got it. Next life factor that can...
I can only do one more question.
Last question I'm going to ask you about sleep. There's so many trends in longevity these days, and so many of them highlighting sleep. What do you have to say about that on some of your, intake from the secrets to longevity?
Well, a couple of things. People in blue zones tend to traditionally go to bed when the sun goes down and wake up when, the sun comes up again. And, it's pretty clear they're getting 8 good hours a day. But my translation of that is set up your bedroom so you mindlessly sleep better. So an optimal temperature is about 65 degrees, believe it or not. Yes, you want blackout shades. Spend a little money and get the blackout so there's no light. Get rid of all electronics. I don't even have a clock in my bedroom. And then ideally you don't drink after 6 p.m. or eat after 6 p.m. Both of those two things will help. Those are hard to remember, but you can set up make sure your mattress is comfortable, make sure your pillow is comfortable, and use your bed for 2 things. One of them sleeping. You can guess what the other one's for, but otherwise don't sit around watching TV.
But what about the air conditioning in the blue zones? Yeah. I didn't think there was any to get your room to 65 degrees.
Yeah, well, most of the year it's not most of the year it's pleasant to sleep, but yes, there are hot days and they take long naps on those days. Icarians is a hot Mediterranean island. They'll go to bed at 2 a.m. and then they'll sleep until the sun wakes them up. So it varies a little bit, but I'm just saying that research shows that Americans are more likely to get a good night's sleep in a cool room than a warm room. And since we have the benefit of air conditioning, I'd recommend you, stack the deck.
This was very informative. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to get my hands on the book. I pre-ordered it. It should be coming in any day. And I encourage everyone who's watching it, get the book and at least watch the documentary. It's only 4 episodes and it's super informative, and you'll learn a lot, especially some of the most new and delicious foods that everyone should be incorporating into their daily routine to live longer, live to 100. Thank you, Dan, for joining so much.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, I see you on the bike at Whole Foods all the time. Bye. Right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ella.